everybody. Thanks for sticking around for our little talk back about this show. My name's Chris Freeman. I'm the general manager here at Flying Anvil Theater, and you are in our theater right now. We're so glad that you're kind of here. We're sitting on the set of our last show, I and You, which was closed in a week early due to the pandemic. So we've left it up as a little memory for us. But I am here with Aaliyah Vassell, who was played Jasmine in the show, and we're just gonna have a little talk. So here we go. What was it like to be an actor on a Zoom call?
That's a great question. I think over Zoom you can still tell the story, but one of my favorite things about theater is the community aspect, the energy in the room, getting to see others, physically see them. So that aspect is always missing, but we're doing what we can. Like the story is still being told. We're still getting those interactions. It's a little bit easier to talk because, one person's talking, you have to mute yourself. So communication is easier, but at the same time, sometimes it's not because of tech. So it's a bit of give and take. I do miss being in the room with people, but it's just another format.
Yeah, Absolutely. And that's kind of interesting. That kind of goes along with the show a little bit because the people in the show are on a Zoom call.
Yeah. And
so they're dealing with that same kind of communication, trying to, there's research out there about, or I say research, I use that term loosely, about how people are like drained after Zoom calls because it's so hard to like mentally read the other person. And so these characters are doing the same, in a weird way, the same way that you guys are doing that communication. And I think that's a big part of the story.
Yeah.
Is how these characters communicate. There's kind of this generational divide, and it's the generational divide between technology of them not understanding how to use the technology, and then there's also this generational divide between how we look at or accept other people.
Yeah.
And I wonder if you can speak to that at all, about the differences between how Red kind of accepted Jasmine into the family versus maybe BP's kind of initial resistance to this new branch.
Yeah. I would definitely say you're spot on when it comes to generational gaps. Red and Jasmine are definitely the closest in age out of all the characters. And so being millennials together, we kind of grew up in the same generation of a lot of things coming to the forefront, a lot of different communities taking a stand when it comes to LGBTQ plus getting their rights, 5 years ago?
Yeah.
And just kind of, I feel like millennials as a group are the ones that have started to bring issues to the forefront that the generation before us was taught not to talk about. I think that's where they meet, and they also kind of they both come from backgrounds where they are minorities or marginalized groups.
Right, because,
Red being of the LGBTQIA community and Jasmine being Black, like they are both minorities in some way or another, and so the struggles are completely different.
Sure.
But at the same time, Red can relate easier to Jasmine than the other generation.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I don't want to make it, the older generation,
of course,
is bad, and the millennials are gonna
not.
win the world. Yeah, absolutely. No, but I think it is definitely. I heard one time that there was someone who said, my generation, speaking of the older generation, was taught tolerance, where this generation, being millennials and now Gen Zers, are being taught acceptance, and how those two things are very, very different. So the other thing about this show is definitely the discussion of race and the underlying system of white supremacy that exists, even when people don't necessarily know that they are a part of that, or they're not actively a Klansman or anything like that.
Just because you may be inherently racist or you did a racist act does not make you a bad person. I think there is this huge conversation going around of like, to be racist means that you are a Klansman, means that you adamantly try to kill people and spread hate. It is a system that we have all grown up in without realizing it.
Yeah.
So when it is called out, that person is actually doing it in an act of love. So I just want to put that out there first because a lot of the characters in this show did acts of racism.
And it's
whether
hard.
They realize it or not.
And
that's the thing, because they're not doing it on purpose. It is just how they've grown up, and it's that's it. So yeah, they're all loving people, they're all good people, but like the system that we've all grown up in makes us this way, and that's just something to understand.
I mean, I wonder if you have any examples of some of those maybe smaller moments that it's easy to just kind of glance past from the show.
Yeah.
That deal with the kind of smaller, not as
microaggressions.
Yeah, microaggressions.
Yeah. I guess the first the first conversation of like, oh, I think she's in the wrong Zoom room. But I wouldn't actually say that would be a racist act. She was clearly just confused.
Right.
Because BP's point was like, you're too young. You can't be our sister, you're too young. I think the way that they shy away from saying the word black is a microaggression, because like, oh, we didn't know you were going to be our sister, let alone, you know, the way that they are speaking about it makes it seem like they equate being black or blackness to a bad thing, to negativity. Yeah. And Red is the one to call that out of like, it's not a bad thing. Like, you can say it. It's just a skin color. It's just a different culture. If you look at it that way. There are also ways that Jasmine shows her own anti-blackness within herself. Because as black people growing up in the system as well, like it trickles down into us. So there's a moment when Red was talking about how she didn't inform everyone that Jasmine was black, and Jasmine goes back to Red and is like, really, Red? For Jasmine to kind of call Red out as if that's an issue is showing that she is used to being treated differently because she is black, when that is not something that she should have to get used to, because it is just a skin color. So that is one way that it can be inherently in all of us, no matter what race you are. But yeah, the way that Red speaks up to her mother, but kind of excuses Scoop's behavior at the beginning. Like, eventually she was like, Scoop, shut the hell up. But just the way that it was like, I'm so sorry, he's just kind of like this, and like that is dismissing his behavior. And I think she learns from that. That's why she says something later of like, okay, I should have just tried to nip it in the butt, and now I'm gonna nip it in the butt.
And I think that's a hard thing for younger people to deal with too, is how do you deal with somebody who is older and who has more lived experiences than you when they are doing something that is, in this case, overtly racist. And how do you have those conversations?
Yeah. It's
a hard thing to do. Yeah. And I think she does it, as many of us do, and just starts being like, no, you have to stop.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, she makes up for it later. I think there are just like, I wouldn't even say moments of weakness, because it's not like she's aware of what she's doing until it happens and she's like, oh, I could have handled that better, let me try again, you know.
I think that, yeah, we keep touching on this, and it's that idea that we don't realize we're doing it. How do we recognize, as a white person, like, how do I recognize that I've done something that is playing into into racism and into anti-blackness and into the system of white oppression? Like, what do I need? Like, how do I recognize that? And and how do I do better, I guess?
I think firstly is just education. You won't be able to recognize or be aware of something that you don't know what it is. So there's books on that. There's White Fragility. Yeah. There's so you want to talk about race. There's Why I No Longer Talk to White People About Race. There's literally lists of anti-racist material out there. Pick one and just start from there. And then the things that you find in the book, find ways to relate it to actions in your everyday life or experiences that happened in your past, of just learning to be aware from there. And then you just try.
Yeah.
You just, once you know what to look for, you're like, oh, I just did that thing. Okay. Do I need to apologize to someone? Do I just need to do better?
Yeah.
What happens when I do this thing again? Am I going to catch it like this? Am I going to pity myself and make it about me? Or am I going to work through it and move on?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Absolutely. That's great advice. I mean, and that's the thing. Most moments of change start with education. And until you know that you're doing a thing, it's hard to move past that. And that's, unfortunately, where things become politicized and people don't want to be educated because it's easier not to be. But for me, when I started kind of doing the education, I started to realize that, like, oh wait, this might have been easy for me, but racism is constantly in the face of my Black friends, and they can't do anything to stop it. And it's just kind of like this family, because they're not racist. They're not, well, they're not, go ahead. Go ahead.
They're not inherently racist. They're not trying to hate. They're not trying to discriminate. They're not trying to judge on purpose.
Right.
I think there's a difference between being full out racist and hating and literally just being like, you're Black and I hate you, and any other kind of race.
Right.
And just to be inherently racist also means that you might make microaggressions because you didn't realize that was in you.
Exactly.
So yeah.
And that's the thing, is it's easy to live in that bubble.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we're really waking up to right now. And I think that's what this show has a lot to deal with, too.
Yeah.
It's about the language. It's about the small, little things you don't realize you're doing. And really, the play doesn't even really necessarily talk about them, but we get this opportunity right now to talk about them.
Yeah.
So I think that's important. So I'm glad you're sticking around. Anything else?
The way that this family is looking at themselves and trying to do better is a way that you can apply that to any part of your life. Whether it comes to the LGBTQ plus community, whether it comes to
science.
Yeah, science.
Like,
whether it comes to, like, even the small things of learning the difference between intention and impact. Of, like, I throw a ball at your head on accident, and then you get hurt, and instead of saying, I'm sorry I hurt you, it's like, it wasn't my intention to throw that ball.
Yeah.
You know, like, just the difference between those things, and realizing that every action you take has a reaction, and, like, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to be aware of it and, like, try to be better, or are you just going to be like, oh, well, I didn't mean to, as in, like, I didn't mean to be racist, or I didn't mean to hurt you. Obviously, we know that, but, like, take some responsibility and learn from it.
Yeah. I'm also interested in knowing kind of how you synthesize those kind of microaggressions that the characters are taking, and how you deal with that as a Black actress?
I would say firstly that there has been like a safe space set up before the rehearsals. Jane's always been checking in with me to make sure like I'm good, and anytime I bring something forward, she listens. So I think number one, if you are the only Black actor in a show, is like making sure there is a safe space created. If the Black actor is talking, and especially if the show has been written by a white person, like that, you do listen, because you can do all the research in the world, you can talk to your Black friends, you can do this, you can do that, but like there is a difference between research and like lived experiences, and being aware and sensitive to that. So this space was set up to where I could come in and I could realize that like we are just playing characters. Everyone has their own inner work that they need to do, but I understand that these things are not being said to me, they're being said to Jasmine. I have faced similar things in my life that Jasmine has gone through, so it's not like it's a new experience to me. I think if it was, if like this family actually was racist and they were just super hateful and all of this stuff, that would be kind of hard.
A much different experience.
Yeah, it's just been a long time since I've been in that space, so to bring it up may bring up bad memories for me and all of this stuff, but the safe space created has really just like allowed me to go in and play and realize that like we are all people playing characters telling the story.
Absolutely. Well, thanks, Leah.
Yeah.
We're going to add in Jill Hinderlight, who played Red, in just a second. So here we go. So we'd like to welcome Jill Hinderlight to the real stage, y'all. We're on a real stage. So Jill, you played Red in the show. So can you just briefly tell me a little bit about kind of your background in developing Red, and how she is maybe similar or different than yourself, or stuff like that?
Sure. I mean, when Jane sent me the script and I read it, I was like, well, basically, this is pretty much me. No, I mean, it is. I mean, because, and the family dynamics, too, are so similar to what I grew up with. And so there's not really a lot of acting going on here.
Don't tell them that. Don't tell them that.
Exactly. But, I am an out lesbian, and so is Red. And it didn't come easily. I came out late in life. I didn't come out until I was 37. And because I grew up in the Bible Belt, I grew up with parents and family very similar to this. And so, I just, when I did finally come out, the whole thing around sexual orientation and race and all that, I just feel like we know what we know until we know something else. Mm-hmm. And I just feel like, especially given how I grew up and where I'm from, I haven't always known it all and haven't always gotten it right. And I think that's why it's so important to meet people different from yourself. And because even right now in this conversation, knowing that it's recorded for all time, I'm a little nervous about it, because my thoughts and my opinions and my experiences are always changing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so for this to be bottled up in time like this, and you to be held to that, for someone to come back and say, gotcha later, is unfair, because we're all growing and we're all learning.
So let's dive into Scoop's character. Because I think as like an audience member, like I said earlier, everybody knows a Scoop. Mm-hmm. And now we have a character that's looking in from the outside and a character that has grown up with Scoop. Mm-hmm. How do we deal with a Scoop in our families, in our lives?
Well, I can tell you how I deal with it. We all have a personal responsibility to not tacitly sit by and let those kinds of things go on. Mm-hmm. And that's how we show up. And but you also have to know what tactics work with what people. And I don't want to use tactics as though I'm being maniacal in some kind of way. But also, I know where I need to be firmer and like, unacceptable, hit the road, Jack. And where I can also be like, I have, maybe another family member where I can say, hey, think about this person's experience. And remember your experience, and if you can draw parallels, then you see light bulbs go off. I have seen that happen with people I know. And they go, oh, I never thought about it like that before. So I think you just have to use good judgment on who you think has a good heart and wants to learn and be educated and come along, and try to bring them along the path that you've traveled. And then you've also got people who, you talk about inherent racism versus deliberate racism.
Yeah.
Then you've got the people who they're never going to learn, they're not interested in learning, they're interested in patriarchal white male power structure, and they're not interested, and that's when you go, see it.
Bye. Yeah, save that energy. And I think, Jill, you are so much stronger than your character Red. Because I
agree.
I think Red is strong, but this is Red's first time in this situation. So like the entire time she's feeling things out, and like sometimes like, we're gonna do this now. You know what I mean? And so I like you talking right now, I'm like, we're friends.
And this is the first time they met in person.
Yes,
I knew immediately.
Y'all are 12 feet apart.
At the first read through with Jasmine, this is the first time I've ever met Jasmine, Aaliyah, and I just immediately was blown away and impressed. But to your point about the Jill different from the character Red. The way I've been playing it is I've been trying to tap into a little bit of newness. I think Red has been out for a while, but I've been playing it as though she's not been out that long with her family.
Sure.
And so, we revert back to being like children when we're around our families, right? These roles that they remember us in and want to keep us captured in. And so there's a lot of reverting going on.
It's very, very clear in the show.
Yes.
And so I've been playing it as though Red has still got a lot of nervousness about her own family approving of who she is.
Of course, yeah.
And so it's like, and now I'm asking them to accept something else that's outside of their norm. And so I'm playing it a little more of an uncertainty, the rawness of when you finally step into your own authenticity of who you are, before you cross that bridge, that nervousness that's there.
And I think that's what Jasmine's feeling the entire time, because it's like, how do you show up for someone else until you've truly shown up for yourself?
Yes.
It's just that struggle.
That's right.
Like, I don't think that Red's failing on purpose. I think that, like, as an ally, we're learning together.
That's right.
But it does start from within. So
yeah, that's right. And we have our experiences of where we know what's going to happen. We know what's going to happen until sometimes, whoa, wait, we didn't know why that happened the way it did, right?
And your body's reaction to that, fight, flight, or freeze. Like, what are you going to do? And all you can do is let it react and then figure it out for next time.
But I do want to wrap it up here. And I just want to say thank you, Aaliyah. Thank you, Jill, for joining us today. Thank you very much for being open, for sharing yourselves. I know this isn't easy conversation to have at all. So I really do want to thank you for offering that, because I think it's a valuable conversation for us to have and for other people to hear. So thank you for listening to us talk for a little while, and we hope that you learned something. We hope that you can take this conversation into your own homes and invite other people to have this conversation with you, because it is an important one, and it's one that we are all facing as a nation right now, and we can do better.